You often feel like you're getting back on track with your money. You're getting your ADHD brain roped in, everything's lining up, and then out of nowhere, boom, the seasons change and your money is a mess again. You are not dreaming this. This is not you. This is very much real. And it's very much real because changing seasons have a real, tangible, measurable impact on us and our finances. And there are many facets of ADHD that amplify the impact that seasonal changes have on us. And that's what we're going to get into on this episode of ADHD Dollars. Welcome back, friends. And if you are new here because this was forwarded to you by a friend or family member, welcome. My name is Shane G. I am an ADHD money coach, and my goal is to help ADHDers get their brains structured appropriately to manage their money so that money goes from something that often is causing financial stress to something that causes empowerment and enablement in their lives. And I fundamentally believe ADHD is a superpower. We simply have to know how to appropriately channel and control it. So, why do the seasons hit us ADHDers differently, right? Why does it? So, the first is our good old friend dopamine, right? We're going back to this again. ADHD should probably really have the word dopamine as one of the D's in it. Not sure we really need to add D's. There's already quite enough of that. It's already a mouthful, but it really is a huge driver of a lot of what we do. So one of the things that triggers and impacts dopamine is light. So changes in sunshine affect energy, affect mood regulation because they affect our brain's dopamine production. And again, our brains are already not producing dopamine at the levels they should. So that makes it harder for us, particularly in seasons where there is less light. Again, this is partially going to be based on your geography, where you are on this spinning planet that we've got as we spin around all of the other planets, and particularly in this case, the sun. The other thing that happens while this light change is impacting our dopamine is routine disruption, right? So particularly the seasonal change we're going through at the recording of this video, which is coming off of summer and getting into fall, days are getting shorter, at least, for those of us in the US, the Northern Hemisphere, days are getting shorter. With that, we are seeing it be darker in the morning. So we already can be challenged to get our butts up, get out of bed, get going with the day because of executive dysfunction, because of our dopamine, because of time blindness, making it hard to motivate ourselves to say, I got to get my ass up now to get great things done today, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours from now. And when we start to disrupt it, the patterns that we've fallen into that are working for summer don't work. Not only to mention the fact that it might be dark when we leave the house and dark when we get home, leading us to not feel like we have the energy we once had, even though it's still 6 o'clock and we had a routine of doing something at 6 o'clock. So we've got this light changing our dopamine, linking up with routine disruption. Many ADHDers also suffer from what is called SAD, and it's kind of very appropriately named. It stands for seasonal affective disorder. Motivation crashes, executive function tanks. When those things happen, what is the first thing you're going to shove out the window? Your bills and your money. Why? Because that whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're going to focus first on the things you absolutely need, keeping yourself fed, keeping yourself clothed, keeping, shelter there. So you're not going to ignore all of your money, all of your bills. You're going to hit those critical ones, but you're not looking at the other things that increase spending. And with all of this happening, right? So we've got less light, we've got it darker more, we've got your routine disrupted. You are going to start feeling down, depressed, bored. And what do our brains want, our ADHD brains, when all that happens? Dopamine, and what is the fastest way to get it? Get on your phone, start doom scrolling Amazon, TikTok shops, Target, Walmart, whatever your vice may be. You're going to start shopping your ass off to try and get cheap dopamine hits. And it's not going to work, right? And if that's starting to happen to you, be sure to check out my episode on free dopamine hits that you can get so that you don't have to spend money on it, right? There are ways to do this for free. And that specifically is episode number 4. I will put the link in the description. But episode number 4 was entirely dedicated to free or very, very low cost, what I call like accounting errors. So free dopamine hits that can help you through that initially. So with all of this happening and hitting us, let's talk about seasonal financial patterns that are there, right? We just talked about what's happening to us and our bodies. But at the same time that's happening, there, as I said in my intro, measurable, tangible things that change with our money as the seasons change. Some of it relates to what's happening in us, like our motivation to do things, the longer hours of the day that make us want to be active for more time, spending money for more time. Other things like changes in temperatures that change from heating to cooling have measurable, tangible financial impacts. So we're going to go through it. We're going to start with summer, since at the time of recording this, we're still technically in summer, starting to get fall weather depending on what geo you're in. But summer is a high energy season, right? If you've got kids, they're out of school. The days are longer. The weather is nice. The sun is bright and inviting, and there's light for more hours of the day. So it's a great time to host parties and picnics because there's more time to take advantage and enjoy it. Not only that, even when the sun, goes down, the fun doesn't stop, because you have really cool activities with the moon, with the stars, with fireworks. You even have sporting events because they light them up. Last weekend, I went to a wolf preserve for a moonlight event, right? We have all of these kind of events where even in summer, because of the warmer temperatures, the night doesn't stop the fun. So with that going on, there's a lot of spending on activities. Now, the cool thing about activity spending is one spend gives you, for the right activity, memories. And memories can give you multiple positive emotional responses to the event, which is multiple repeatable dopamine hits. So it's not free dopamine hits, but it's at least multiple hits for one spend, right? But summer tends to be a time that there's this extra spending. Also tends to be a prime vacation time for a lot of people, more spending. Another thing that plays in summer is it gets hot. And this past summer, we were definitely in scorcher territory, which means more of our budget has to go to cooling in most cases. And generally, we're not seeing a bump up in pay in summer. If your company operates on a fiscal calendar, a good number of those wrap up in May. So maybe you do see bonuses or something coming. I end up getting my bonus near the end of summer because of the way our fiscal calendar hits. So you could be seeing something like that, but generally you're not seeing your base income come up. And this is also a time that ADHDers can experience a restlessness. It's not the same as when it gets dark and we experience a kind of cabin fever situation. It's more of a, oh my goodness, look at what Susie's doing on Instagram. Look at what Joe's doing. We're seeing all these things happening, even if it's from people we don't know. And we feel restless because we need to be doing it. We often can feel overwhelmed because there's so many things to do. And we can't lock in on the one we want to do the most because of our executive dysfunction. I often just make a list, check some off. We can do some next summer too, because I'm not going to have time to hit them all, right? I've talked about, is it a list or is it a wish list? Well, in this case, it's both, right? It's a wish list That is also a list, but I don't need to check it off in a single summer. So transitioning into fall as we are now, we've got back to school, right? And whether you have kids or not, that does impact you because with that, businesses adjust hours because there's certain hours they're going to see less volume if they do get kids. For me, this is the season I tend to like to vacation because there's less kids there. And that's just the vibe that I would prefer. So things like that. This does have an impact whether you have kids or whether you don't. If you do, it has a bigger impact. You don't have to feed them all 3 meals a day. For now, 1 or 2 meals, depending upon whether they get breakfast at school, it's covered. The other thing about fall, though, is we start to see more holidays come in. So if you're big on Halloween, like my husband is, we are going to have some spending with decorations. We throw a Halloween party each year. That has some spending. So we have all of these things going on that can contribute to spending. Not to mention, even if you are not big on like Halloween, we've also got Thanksgiving, where it's one of I think the actually biggest travel holiday. More people travel for Thanksgiving with its family focus. And because Thanksgiving is, at least in the United States, we celebrate Thanksgiving. Again, quick reminder, Thanksgiving and those types of holidays are country specific. But because it's country specific, it has wider recognition because it's not tied to a religion. It crosses all of them. So generally, most people in a country celebrate or recognize it. But you have a lot of travel. I, for example, will be flying down to Florida to spend Thanksgiving with my husband's family down there. So this is all, spending that comes into play. And then we have Christmas in the precipice. This is when most people should start planning for Christmas. That's not always what happens, but it's a good time. And that makes this a good time to reset budgets, right? You may have just overspent in summer. You've got this other big spending coming up in Christmas. There's not time to change your entire financial world, but there's time to make some changes, some actions that can reduce, maybe even eliminate the amount of credit card debt you leave Christmas with. Fall does start to get darker, so we can start to get initial onset of seasonal depression, which can increase shopping as we seek dopamine. In winter, we are now in full, holy crap, Christmas is coming spending mode, right? Companies are also doing sales earlier and earlier because they realize shoving a whole bunch of spending into a 2 or 3 week period isn't actually ideal for their business either. They'd rather get the spending earlier so they have an earlier indicator if they're going to hit their quarterly numbers coming out of the Christmas season, because those do have an outsized weight on the overall financial performance, stock performance of particularly retailers. Seasonal depression is in full swing. Comfort spending is here. In order for us to get engagement, some of that creativity in our brain, some of the social interaction, we can't just go and do a cheap picnic where we make sandwiches. We often can't just comfortably go for a walk around the block, which often means we are going to a Target, we are going to a mall, we are going to somewhere that is a place that's going to try to entice you to spend, right? We've got heating in full spend here. So if you're on oil, you're definitely feeling the pain. If you're on natural gas, it depends on the prices. If you're on electric, in this season, you're going to be feeling it because the bills are spiking, right? And again, less sunlight causes us to be less motivated. And so usually our financial tasks like watching our spending, looking at our budgets, fall low down on the list. Final season we'll talk about is spring. This is where you start to get a natural surge in motivation. So fall is a great time to do a reset. Spring is a great time to look at the reset you did in fall and see what are 3 to 5 big, bold changes you can make. Tap into that energy that you're getting from the natural motivation surge and knock some of these things out. It's also tax refund season, which many people, the way their taxes are structured, they use their refund as forced savings. So another great time to potentially make big money moves as you get that refund. So what do we do about this, right? We've got things happening in us, real things, tangible, measurable things happening in the world. But what are some practical, quick tips of what we can do here? Well, the first thing is for those of us that budget, don't treat your budget as if every month is the same, as if every season is the same. So getting down to month level spending feels like a lot, and I don't necessarily recommend it. The compromise is seasonal level spending. So break your calendar into chunks based on the season and say that, okay, for the winter season, I'm going to assume heating and cooling is, I don't know, $300 a month, whatever it may be. For the spring and fall seasons, it's $50 a month because we have neutral temperatures, right? Now, is it exactly that? No. Could you go and pull your exact historical numbers from last year and add 3 to 5%? Absolutely. Probably a little much for the ADHD brain. A good compromise is seasonal buckets. And that way it lets you account for the differences between the seasons and the numbers to expect, right? Link your financial and money habits to things that don't change with daylight. So a good example is some of my students, when I coach them, they link it to their Friday, Saturday, or Sunday morning coffee. Because it doesn't matter what the season is, they're going to have their morning coffee. The time could shift a little. The amount of light could shift a little, but they're still going to have it. Personally, I do have a morning coffee, but that's usually, I'm already getting into my day, checking the news. Personally, I prefer a once a week money happy hour. Pour yourself a nice glass of wine, make yourself a beverage. If you don't drink, a nice sparkling water, your favorite soda. Maybe you don't let yourself have, a fully caffeinated beverage much, but this is a chance that you do. And that little caffeine spike can help trigger some focus and things of that nature. Again, some ADHDers, we can't do well with caffeine. If that's you, that's fine. But make yourself a nice healthy smoothie, green juice, if that is what speaks to you. And look at your budgets and treat this as a date you've made with your current self and your future self. Dopamine planning. I referenced episode 4 where I talked about free dopamine hits. In summer in particular, you often get dopamine just because you've got enough going on. In the seasons that you don't, winter in particular, fall, it starts to happen. You need to be more purposeful about getting dopamine hits, right? This is also the time of year that certain medications that help with your brain getting, most of them don't help directly with dopamine, some do, but they help with serotonin and other chemicals in the brain. It might be a good time to evaluate whether those work. It's often thought of that if you're an ADHD or on medication, that is a permanent, 12 months a year, 365 days a year thing. And while for stimulants that may be the case, there are other drugs that can help with some of these other ADHD impacts that may be worth exploring as well. Again, I'm not a doctor. I don't recommend any specific medication, just something I've, seen in some students, read about, etc. Not fully experimented myself in full transparency with seasonal based medicine, but I'm also working on some medicine changes now, so that could become a thing. We'll see where I end up with that. Get a buddy, because here's the one cool thing about all these seasonal changes. It's not just happening to you, it's happening to all of us. Now, if your buddy lives further away, the exact impact of the change could be different. But that actually could be beneficial, right? If you have a buddy that's far enough away and you still can have great real-time conversation, if they have more of a down season when you have an up season because of the amount of light and the temperatures, you can help each other out when you're at the low points and they're energized. Like, that actually could be a benefit. And final is, don't forget that these money tasks can have energy and you can help do that, right? So I think we often forget, and I've experienced this myself, when I have a money problem, I have a credit card that's got 5, 8, 10, whatever it might be, 1,000 on it. Seeing it fall from 10 to 9 is a dopamine hit. Seeing it fall from 9 to 8 is a dopamine hit. Heck, seeing it fall $500 and stay lower for 2 months can be a dopamine hit, right? Don't forget that these dopamine hits, while maybe less frequent and while maybe take a little bit more effort to get to, can be there and can be huge. Because here's the thing, if you take your balance from 10,000 to 9,000, every time you go and look at your credit card, you're reminded of that win, you're reminded of that achievement, and you get a hit, right? And you keep getting a hit. So part of what we need to do and what I work with my students on is shifting their hits towards achievements with their finances, right? Well, that's a wrap for how ADHD is impacted by the seasons, really in the context of your money. Again, some of it is internal to us. ADHD is the way our brains work. But a good portion of it is external, meaning everyone faces it. Everyone faces the changes from heating to cooling, from kids going back to school, to more vacations in the summer, to kids coming out of school. So the other cool thing is this isn't one of those money challenges that is uniquely ADHD. Again, we have some extra challenges with it, but it's also something you can relate to with really everyone, all of your neurotypical friends, your neurodivergent friends, your friends that aren't diagnosed, but something ain't right. Just saw a t-shirt being sold on TikTok that said that, and it gave me a good laugh. But what it really means at the end of the day is that if this is something to some extent that is experienced by everyone, you're not doing anything wrong. There's no character flaw. Your brain is responding to real changes. Our brain responds a little differently than neurotypical people, but many of them get seasonal depression, right? This really is one where we are all in it together. And when you need a little help, reach out to someone. If you'd like to work with me, I do have a fall money reset program with some spaces still available for this current fall of 2025 reset. It's a shorter program than kind of my full length reset program, really focused on seeing where you're coming out of summer and positioning you as best as we can for Christmas. And for any debt that you are going to carry over, we'll put in a plan to make sure we're able to bring that down as quickly as possible. And I also, during this season, reserve a little more time to really be a spending accountability coach, which simply means you can shoot me a message being like, I'm about to buy something. I'm pretty sure it's stupid, but I need someone to help walk me through it, right? And I can absolutely do that with you and help you put in place a framework to understand the impact of your spending. I'm never one to tell you to buy or not to buy something, but I help you think through it so you can make a decision that fully incorporates your current self wanting dopamine and your future self wanting to have money for a vacation or to travel home to see family for Thanksgiving or Christmas, or, buy a house or a new car in the future. Anyway, this has been another episode of ADHD Dollars. Please, if you haven't already, go ahead and give me a follow or subscribe, whatever the button says on your preferred podcasting platform. And if you know someone else who could be helped out by these episodes, please do me a huge favor. It's one of the biggest things you can do to help me out, and send this over to them. Until next time, it's Shane G signing off.